You know those videos, the ones that tell you you can start woodworking for $1,000? I love those videos. I watch them all the time. But if I'm being honest, you don't need to spend that kind of money to get going and make some simple projects. You don't need a big table saw. You don't need a fancy workbench. You might not even need a workspace. Here, let me show you. This is a perfectly good workbench. I know, it doesn't look anything like other benches, but this thing will handle measuring, marking, layout, sawing, planing, and hold your wood in all kinds of positions. I built this bench in my backyard with the most basic tools, and the whole thing is made from a pair of 2x8s. So it's cheap. Everyone's always asking me which woodworking vise they should buy, and it's a good question. There are so many choices out there. But before you buy a vise, you should at least try to work without any vise at all. Your work can be held against simple stops made of wood. Just having something to push against is really effective. If you need more holding power, body weight might be all you need. You can step on a piece or even sit on it, and it won't move at all, especially if you know a couple of tricks. And I'm going to share a bunch of them throughout this video. And I know you're saying, Rex, I don't even have a workspace. Well, don't let that stop you. I mean, I'm down here in my workshop, but this week I'm doing a whole project just on this patch of floor. If you have a space that's about 10 feet square, that's plenty. And your workspace could even be outside because the bench and the other stuff I'm going to show you is small and portable. It's easy to move and easy to store. Using a small space works best if you don't let it get cluttered up with extra stuff and you keep it flexible. Most of the time, your bench is the center of your work, and it's in the middle of the space. But you should reconfigure your workspace for whatever you're doing. You can use that same space for sawing, even breaking down big pieces of stock. Just move the bench out of the way, or lean it up against the wall. If you're moving your bench a lot, you need places to keep your tools. I use hand planes that are made to stand up. I've also got a couple of these little stools and benches. This gives me a good spot to store small tools and keep them off the floor when I'm not using my bench. The important thing is to keep your mind as flexible as your workspace. Don't get locked into a single setup, and your work will flow smoothly from one operation to the next. If you want to do woodworking using the bare minimum tools, you're going to have to learn how to use your body to hold the work. So I've done lots of projects with this Ryobas as my only saw. And it works great, but it works a lot better if you also have a pair of these low Japanese Sawhorses. I honestly wish they came bundled together and everybody who bought a Ryobas just got a set of Sawhorses along with it. They're that useful. These low horses get your work the perfect height off the floor, so you can take advantage of that long handle and use an easy, ergonomic sawing stroke. You can kneel down and use this one-handed grip for detail work, even very fine details. Kneeling puts you close to the work, so you can see your line and use the tool with control. When you switch to standing with one foot on the work, you can use both your arms and the big muscles in your back and shoulders to get through big cuts quickly. Now, even with your full weight on the work, it might slide around a little, but that's easy to fix. I just put this little piece of shelf liner across one of the horses, and it gives amazing grip, even when I'm really pulling on that saw. If you'd like to build these low Sawhorses or the little bench from this video, I've got plans for both of those. They're really affordable, and you can grab them at rexkrueger.com/store. And if you're interested in building either one of these, they're in my book, Everyday Woodworking. It's a complete introduction to just this style of minimal, stripped-down woodworking, and you can grab that anywhere you buy books. Even though I'm using my body for work holding, I still have to work smart. So for instance, I would never just hold a piece in midair like this and start working on it. I've got no control this way, and whatever energy I put into the wood with this hand, I just have to absorb that with the other hand. All that's going to do is make me tired. What I should do instead is brace the work against the bench like this, and then work this way. This way, whatever force I'm using goes into the bench or into the ground. I'm not working against myself. This is a much smarter way to work. I need to use the marking gauge on this board. I want to keep working smart, so I'll brace the work against the planing stop and let the bench absorb the force. When I get to the end of the stroke, I'll just twist the board a little bit so the gauge can clear the end of the work, but still be held firm against that stop. I need to edge plane this board, and the planing stop won't work for this. The board would just fall over. But I can cross my leg over the bench and push the board against the stop with my ankle. You need to push forward firmly for this to work, but once you master the technique, you won't even need a vise for this kind of thing. Using the bench and my body together lets me move quickly through detail work. I'm planing chamfers all around this board, and I can hold it with one hand to get the right angle and then brace the work against the stop to resist the force of the plane. The best thing about this approach is that I'm working free, without the board locked in place. I'm trying to get all those bevels even and get them to meet at the corners, so it's really helpful if I can just flip the board around and instantly switch directions. Working this way is efficient, and it gives me good results. I guess it's time to talk about these planes. These are traditional Chinese planes, and they might look unfamiliar, but they're really not. You just have to learn how to grip them. They're really comfortable once you get that figured out. And then everything else is a lot like a Western plane. They work on the push stroke. They've got an iron and chip breaker that you'll find very familiar. They've got a wedge, just like a European wooden plane would. They're not nearly as unfamiliar as they look. Now, I used to use these over at my high bench, and they were okay. I didn't love them. It's when I came over and used them on my low bench. That's when I really started to figure it out. Adjusting these planes is super easy. I just use a standard claw hammer, and it couldn't be simpler. More iron, less iron. That's the basics right there, but there are some finer points. It works really well if you flip the plane over like this and put your index finger against the blade. That way it can't fall out if you mess something up. And then you just sight down the sole of the plane, and once you get the iron sticking out of the mouth, you'll see just the edge of it coming up. It's surprising how well you can see it. And then adjusting it isn't a big deal. If you want more iron, you just hit it there. Less iron, hit it back there. And then your lateral adjustment is just side to side like that. And you can see everything that's going on. With a little bit of practice and sighting down the sole like this, you will be able to set these planes up probably on your first try. Now, the other thing I love about these planes is how easy they are to store. One of the big advantages to this style of hand plane is that you can set it down on the end, and it automatically leans forward onto the back of the iron and just balances there. The edge is up off the ground, so it won't get damaged. And with the plane sticking up like this, you can easily reach down and pick it up without getting off the low bench. You can see me switching from my jack plane to my smoothing plane as I work. Both planes are within reach, but they're also out of the way, and they don't interfere with the work. My jack plane is just set up with a cambered iron and a wide mouth, and my smoother has a straighter iron and a tighter mouth. It can take wispy shavings and leave a lovely surface. Setting these planes up is easy. I have an old video to show you how, and I'll link to that down in the description. Now, I know you're thinking that these planes seem nice, but there's no way they're as good as a nice metallic plane. I mean, here I am shooting end grain over at my stand-up bench. I'm using a carefully made shooting board and a fancy, dedicated shooting plane. How am I possibly going to get these results with these weird Chinese planes? Honestly, it's easier than you would think. You brace the work against the bench top. Stand up and plane down across the edge of the board. The long sole of my jack plane registers against the work to help keep me straight, and the plane slices right through those end grain fibers. Now, this is more demanding than using a shooting board because you don't have a jig to hold everything steady. You'll need to practice and learn how to control the tool, but there are lots of tricks. I'm skewing the plane and using a circular motion to get a cleaner slicing action. This keeps the plane from jamming against those tough fibers. You also can't go all the way across because you would break out the grain on the far end. When you're shooting with this technique, you work from one corner to the middle, then flip the board and work from the other end. If you master this technique, you'll get surprisingly good results without any additional tools or jigs. So when I started making this video, this was a build video. I was going to make this little cricket stool. It's a great piece of English furniture. And I was looking at it and thinking, that's not very difficult. I could build that using the low bench, the low Sawhorses, the really minimal toolkit. And I started doing the build, and I was doing so many techniques and ideas that I don't usually talk about that I thought, this video is going to be like an hour long, which is dumb. Instead, let me split it in half. I'll do one video about these super basic techniques, and then the next time I see you, we'll do the cricket stool and we'll have plans and all that stuff. If you want to get ready for that build, you might want to build the low bench or the low Sawhorses. I've got plans for both of those, and I'll link to them down in the description. And you can also check out Everyday Woodworking, which will walk you through those things and a bunch of other tools and basic techniques. And of course, These videos would never be possible without my patrons on Patreon. They already got these plans for free. They've had them for a long time. You can get that and a bunch of other rewards at patreon.com/Rex Krueger. I'll see you next time with the cricket stool build. Thanks so much for watching.